Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum. Dear students and followers and friends, today we are going to discuss another topic from Pakistani post-colonial literature. Today's topic is an essay by Zulfiqar Ghose. The title is Orwell and I. Now, before going to discuss the main content and the argument of the essay, let's shed a brief light on what actually he wants to tell us. What actually is his main concern that he has been compelled to write this very essay. We, being the students of literature, being the lovers of literature, we claim that literature is universal. There is no age, there is no gender, there is no nationality, and there is no discrimination or any section or category of literature. Literature is pure literature and it is purely universal. And he says that he is writing this essay because this claim is not true. There is nothing universal in literature because the British writers, the British audience, the journals, the newspapers and whatever that is related to literature, they discriminate the writers from different nationalities and different origins. All those people in the UK, they consider the writers from the British or the UK as superior, while the literary writers from other parts of the world who belong to different nationalities, who belong to different cultures, who belong to different language origin, they, when write in English, they are considered as inferiors. So this prejudiced way, this biased way has been discussed by Zulfiqar in this essay, and he tries to give arguments why he feels like this, why he thinks that the literature is also categorized, literature is also divided by different people on the basis of nationalities, culture and language. Zulfiqar starts his essay by drawing a parallel comparison between himself and George Orwell, who is also a non-famous English writer. He says that both of them, means George Orwell and himself, they were born in India. He gives us the exact location that he was born in Sialkot, while George Orwell was born in Motihari, located in the north of India. And then when he was less than a year old, means George Orwell was less than a year old, he was taken back to England. His family migrated again to England, or they went back to England in London. But for himself, he says that he stayed in the Sialkot or in the subcontinent, because he talks about the era when India and Pakistan were not separated and it was under, means the subcontinent was under the rule of the British Empire. So it was a combined state, or a combined occupied state for the British Empire, and it was a colony in fact. So he says that when Orwell was born, he was less than a year and he was taken back to England, while Zulfiqar was born in the same region, means Sialkot or in the subcontinent, and then he stayed for 17 years in the India or the subcontinent. Now he says, he tells about himself that when he was 13 years old, he was that much capable that he could recite the poems of Shakespeare and Lord Byron, and he could make people understand all about these poems and the hidden meanings. Means he was that much capable. Then when he was taken to England, means to London, he started his career over there, literary career. This is the place where he draws commonalities or the parallel lines between George Orwell and himself. He tells that the way George Orwell started his career, a literary career, by writing periodicals for the London periodicals, and then afterwards he worked for BBC, same was the case with Zulfiqar. When he reached London in 1952, although Orwell had already died in that period, but Zulfiqar also started his career by writing periodicals for London periodicals, and then he started working with BBC. Later on, the way George Orwell had published his book, Zulfiqar already published his book. So it means that there is a similar line or a parallel line between both of the writers. They both pursued literary career, they both started the writing career in the same way, and then they both published their books. Now, what is the difference? The difference is that Orwell, when he was born, he was less than a year, he was a baby and he was taken back to England. But Zulfiqar stayed for 17 years in India. Now, this is the juncture where Zulfiqar poses a question. He asks, what would have happened if Zulfiqar was taken to London when he was he was less than a year, and what would have happened to Orwell if he had stayed in India for all those years when Zulfiqar stayed? But then he also gives his answer. He says that there would have been no difference. Orwell would have been seen as Orwell, and Zulfiqar would have been seen as Zulfiqar. Why? Because one belonged to the superior race and the other belonged to the inferior race. Why? Because one was born English and the other was born as a colonized person. Then Zulfiqar expounds, when he started his own literary career, he was of the opinion that Orwell was praised by the people, by the critic, by the audiences, because he was a very great writer and his writing was very superior. And he had also formed an opinion that people in England, they do not discriminate, they do not have prejudice, they do not have bias. So this was just to pave his mental way that he would also succeed and he would also become a famous writer and he would also become someone who is admired. But slowly and gradually he started realizing that though English people or English race could not be termed as racist, but they are extremely nationalists. Now he says that why he says that they are nationalistic, because English people, they appreciate English people, they encourage, they motivate the people of the same race. But when it comes to the people who belong to the region outside UK or who are not English by birth or who are not English by bloodline, they are considered alien, or in the terms of Homi Ke Baba, they are considered as others, because they do not give, means the English people do not give those aliens a space in between them. Those people who migrate to London and who want to be among the ranks of the English people, they are never accepted. Why? Because on one side they consider themselves, the English people, they consider themselves as superior, while on the other side, those people who migrate to London or UK and who want to get mingled into that culture, society, and then want to pretend to be like them, are never considered the same. So this is how his view about English people change with the time. And then he quotes an example as well. He says that there was a poetry event and he was invited, and some other English poets were also invited. So when it was his turn, the audience listened to his words or his poetry or his works very calmly. But when the term of the English poets came, though they were not very good poets, yet they were praised and they were applauded by the audience very much. So this slowly and gradually formed the notion of Zulfiqar that English people, they do not accept others. They do not accept those who want to get into the ranks or the society or the culture of the English people. So this is what Zulfiqar is trying to tell us, that although literature is considered universal, but this literature is then categorized, and it is categorized on the basis of nationalism. And this category or this categorization of literature being divided on the basis of nationalism is the worst form of discrimination. And this literature which is being divided on the basis of nationalism is the worst form of literature. Why? Because it judges people, because it give value to the people, or it does not give value to the actual work, rather it gives value to the background of the author or the background of the poet. Then he explains something else, and he tries to tell us that the English people, they considered or they consider or they appreciate the people who belong to United Kingdom, Ireland and USA, and they are considered as primary English language writers. Then the secondary class comes, and it is the people, it consists of the people who belong to the colonies like Canada, Australia and New Zealand. And then the lower rank comes, and the lower rank means that the people of Africa, Asia and Caribbean, or these writers or those writers are considered as, though they are considered English writers, but their rank is very much low, and they are considered as inferior. Then he gives a very clear example of this as well. He says that Joseph Conrad was a very much great poet, and he was like a legend. But when he's compared to Thomas Hardy and some others, Conrad is not given that value. Why? Because he is an African writer and he is not an English writer. Although he writes in English, yet he is not English. So that is the problem where this discrimination comes. But Zulfiqar says that it is not discrimination. The root of this sort of discrimination is somewhere in nationalism, and they judge people on the basis of nationalism, and this nationalism is the root cause of problems for everyone, and specifically for writers as well. He then goes to another extent, and he says that when the literature comes from the English people, it is called English literature. But when literature comes from the people who belong to Asia, Caribbean or African, it is termed as Commonwealth literature. Means it is seen as literature, but it is put in a boundary of Commonwealth literature. And whenever somebody would try to read Zulfiqar or Conrad or anyone else, he would be judged on the spectacle or with the spectacle of the Commonwealth writer. Means he would never be considered an English writer. He would always be considered as a Commonwealth writer. Why? Because he is considered a Commonwealth writer, and his work or his or their works are published in Commonwealth and anthologies. Commonwealth anthologies, it means that they are kept away from the mainstream writers and the mainstream audience. So it means the categorization is done. One is English writings and one is Commonwealth writings. If a Commonwealth writer is of a very great extent, or is of a very high or elaborated extent, or a highly valued writer, yet he would be considered a Commonwealth writer, and he would never be allowed to be in the English writers or in the group of English writers. In this essay, Zulfiqar tries to inculcate this thing into our minds, that although English people preach that they want to teach civilization, they want to impart knowledge, they are very much good people, they are very much chosen people, they are the people who are very much acceptive towards other nationalities, other cultures and other traditions, yet they are biased towards even from their roots. Means this biased perspectives, this prejudice perspective is in their blood. They not only are biased against cultures, against people, against nationalities, but also against writings. They have not only divided the world into different spheres, means the others and themselves, or we against the others, but they have even divided the world of literature on the basis of this nationality, that English writers and Commonwealth or African or Asian writers. So he is trying to expose English nation that not only the government is biased and prejudiced against others, but also the people, the journals, the books, the critics, the reviewers, the audience, and everybody has got prejudice and biasness in their roots, and they are being governed by the wave of nationalism, which does not allow them to accept others. Means they have drawn a clear line, a demarcation between themselves and the people who belong to other nations. Although they teach civilization, although they are of the opinion that they are good people and they are very acceptive people, yet inside they are biased, they are prejudiced, and they are hypocriticals. Means they are very much hypocrite towards others, and they can never be on the ranks of humanity. Why? Because they do not consider others as human beings, they consider them as others, and their literature is also considered as other literature. So means there can be no equality as far as they are concerned. There can be no humanness or humanity among them. Why? Because whatever the case is, they are still having this thing in mind that they are superior, and the others, whatever the case is, others are always the inferiors. It means Zulfiqar is of the opinion that all these problems are because of nationalistic fervors. If there is no feeling of nationalism in the adverse way, like in a positive way, nationalism is fine, but in the adverse way, if there is nationalism, there would be problems and there will be problems. So he is blaming nationalism, although he is covering English people, that they are not racist, but indirectly he is trying to tell us that everything that has been done under the umbrella of nationalism is because it is something in their nature. So he is trying to make us understand that whatever the case is, the world, like East and the West, they cannot meet. There will always be a demarcation between East and the West. There will always be one superior and one inferior, and it would be like in the ranks of people, in the ranks of culture, in the ranks of religion, in the ranks of tradition, in the ranks of customs, and in the ranks of literature as well. I hope that the summarized version of the essay and then the analysis portion is very much clear. If there is any question, you are welcome to put it into the comment box. Thank you very much and goodbye.